Hi, Tony.
I would like to call the January 22, 2024 City Council meeting to order at 7 p.m. All rise for Pledge of Allegiance. Roll call. We are all here, and we are joined by a real special guest tonight. So I'd like to kind of jump in here and do a special recognition now that we have most of you here. I'm sure Annie will leave in a few minutes. So let's do this. Special recognition of Alexandra Rains for your outstanding service, dedication, commitment to the city of Scappoose, Oregon. You came to us as a program analyst in July of 2016, quickly moving to assistant to city manager, and again quickly to assistant city manager, and then fortunate to be the interim city manager before you took over as city manager. And so that was at the top. There's really not more to go. So she's leaving us now. Bigger and better things. But I wanted to thank you, especially for my first year. I think that was probably the hardest job at all, of having to work with me for a year. So I appreciate it very much, your hard work and dedication. And I want to give this to you tonight.
Mine's still trying to join now, so let me see. Yeah, I'm there.
Okay, ready?
Very much.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Looking at the agenda, if we can, since we have most of the senior center here tonight early, last time they were going to be late because of another engagement, but I'd like to see about moving them up to number 2, and then just sliding everybody down 1, if that is okay. That works. I'm looking for approval of the agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Council President Greisen.
I move to approve the agenda as amended.
Motion to move the approve the agenda as amended. Any seconds? Second by Councilor Santiago. Any question? Seeing none, all those in favor state by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, on to public comment. This is a place on the agenda where the public is invited to speak to council regarding any matter not on the agenda and not scheduled for public hearing. Members of the public addressing council are requested to give their name and city of residence. Speakers are to limit their testimony to 5 minutes, as we are limited to 30 minutes total for all public comments. And I do have a timer if that helps. I do have a couple comments. We'll start with Forrest Hornady. You'd like to come on up? Yes, please. State your name and city. Speak loudly into here so they can hear you online. You can hold it if you wanted.
Bear with me, I just had surgery on my carotid artery. I got a numb tongue.
Okay.
My problem is, I live on the end of Day Street. I've had many complaints sent to the city here about this one person. He operates these big trucks, and he's running a business from that residence. I've complained to the city council, not the city council, public manager, city manager. Called the police many times, and it's okay for a couple of weeks, and it's back over same thing again. What he's doing, he's parking all his big trucks on city property. At the end of Day Street, it's a real nice area where nice and green, but that's a flood area. And January is probably the worst times for floods, but he's just tearing it up around there. But I'd like to ask for a wooden barrier or blockade, keep his trucks out. And it seems like it, I hope that would do the job. Bothers me a lot because I'm getting on in age. I'll be 75 or pushing. And my health isn't improving where I have to put up with this noise all the time. And my hobby is, I calm myself down. I have a hobby of silversmithing. And I do real good with that. But every time he's in the area, he revs it up. He knows it bothers me because he knows I'm doing this. And I'd appreciate it very much. You can help me with it to resolve this issue.
Okay, thank you. We'll look into it,
I appreciate
talk,
it.
and we'll get you a response.
I appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Hornady.
Thank you.
All right. Got one more. Joel Haugen, on down.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Some hopefully good news to start 2024. Pete McHugh and I are hopeful to resurrect the annual Memorial Chess Tournament in Scappoose. We did it before COVID and we've had the hiatus and we'd like to bring it back. Working with the school district and the city. The city can help by publicizing it and conceivably as a backstop in case we can't work out the schedule at the school district. So we requested our date request is April 6th. It's the only date that our chess tournament guru from Corvallis can manage because he does these tournaments up and down the West Coast. So he's just totally booked except for April 6th. So we're kind of locked into that date. And that we're hopeful that the school district can manage the facilities for us. We requested the auditorium, the cafeteria, and the library as we've done in the past years. If that doesn't work, I think we could also fashion something out with city facilities here. So the courtroom here, the council room, the library. I talked with Jeff. Jeff was okay with it, and we could use the Watts House, which would be kind of cool. So we'd all be localized and so forth. So if the school district doesn't work out, I would like you to entertain the notion of hosting it here on site, which would be kind of good in a way too, kind of cool actually. So if you have some questions, please ask. Otherwise, would you put down April 6th as our date for the next Memorial Chess Tournament?
Saturday, the April 6th. Okay,
Mayor Massey.
yes.
Just briefly, we had tentatively scheduled the annual town meeting.
Oh, shoot.
The chess tournament is like an all day, several hour thing.
It generally starts about 8 in the morning and goes to about 4 in the afternoon.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
that would then have us requesting the Scappoose School District facilities.
I believe we already have.
We already have, okay. You need, how much space do you need? How many-
We requested the auditorium, the cafeteria, and the
It
library.
kind of sounds like we've already taken that for the town
Okay,
meeting.
yeah. So if that's all iced over,
Yeah.
but then the backstop then would be the city facilities. So if we could use this room, the library, and the Watts House, we could talk with Janet. I'm sure Janet would be fine with that.
What times again were you thinking? How many
It would be
hours?
like from 8 till 4.
Joel, how many are you expecting?
Pete, how many do we have?
He's talking.
Oh, how many? It was, and we'd probably go over 100 because it draws from Seattle down to Medford. But it's really a good community event, because it's just great all the way around. But we would have, I would expect it to probably be around 100, maybe a little more.
I would also entertain maybe the senior center.
Yeah.
And then also, and the gymnasium at the high school. If we're in the cafeteria and the auditorium, I don't know if that would be far enough apart. But yeah, we'll mark that on the calendars and try to keep us posted. And once we've located a sure location, we'll publicize it, I would think.
Yeah, well, when I brought this up to the school district, they said that they weren't sure what the city was gonna do for that date or not, so they didn't have you locked in yet.
I've never been.
Anyway.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any more, Susan, for us? Anybody online? Okay. I would like to close public comments. Thank you. On to consent agenda. We're looking at December 4, 2023 City Council Work Session Minutes and December 4, 2023 Council Meeting Minutes. Looking for someone to make a motion to approve the consent agenda. Yeah, motion to approve the consent agenda.
Yes.
Council Santiago first. Any seconds?
Second.
Second by Counselor Holmes. Any discussions or questions? All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we're on to new business. So we're gonna move up number 6, discussion of the remaining funds for the senior center. Discuss that now. City Manager Alexander Rains, if you'd like to take it from here.
Yes. Mayor and Council, as you are aware, there was $20,000 put into the budget to help support the senior center for this year. We had ultimately decided to take a portion of that, which was just shy of $6,000, to pay PSU's Center for Public Service to do a program with them to assess the center and do 4 trainings. That training has now concluded, and in your packet, you'll see that there is the final report on what that entailed and then the recommendations on how to help them moving forward. So now you have, I believe it's, to be exact, $14,006 or something essentially left over from that total amount. And now the question, I guess, to you all is, now that they have gone through that process, is there something specific essentially you want to earmark that money for, or is it that you're wanting to give them the money with full flexibility to, fund whatever it is they see fit at this time? And then just to help facilitate that conversation and help you all decide, we do obviously have a lot of representatives here tonight from the senior center that could at least bring some ideas forward to you if there is something specific that they're hoping to fund with that money. Or, and again, if that's not the case, then there are the recommendations in the report to help you all out.
Thank you. Yes, I would like to entertain or hear any recommendations you may have.
Do Pete or
Anybody from
Clara,
the
do you
senior
either of you
center
have
would
any?
like to?
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
if there's anything that you guys are looking for, before we give our recommendations, or. Yes, if you could nice and loud into the microphone so they can hear you online.
I personally would recommend any funds we do get go into building maintenance. Our building does need repairs. We have a certain amount of money donated for the portico, which we are getting bids for. We also are hopefully getting a grant from the PUD for the bread store roof. But the siding needs to be done. Our roof is not leaking, but basically any monies we would get would preferably, and from my point of view, go into building maintenance to keep it sound and healthy. Structurally sound.
Thank you. Alex, when you're looking at these training recommendations, do you see anything in there that we would recommend, or think that after you kind of were part of the training, think that would be beneficial?
I mean, I do think that all of the recommendations here are certainly worthwhile. I know that one that kind of jumped out to me was there were several comments about needing some legal counsel and some other assistance with things like the bylaws revision and items like that. that could certainly be a candidate for the funds. I really think, you know, any of these recommendations are very worthwhile. So I think the idea here was just to kind of get some feedback from you all. I do think in terms of strategic planning, I think that there are probably ways we could help them with that wouldn't have a big ticket, you know, price tag attached. So, but especially for something where they're going to need legal advice, you know, that's going to be expensive. But again, also I would, you know, I want to, you know, hear and consider, you know, what they're requesting in terms of building maintenance, if that's really what they feel like the best and, you know, highest good is for the money.
Claire, have you looked at the recommendations at all? Have you guys talked amongst the board at all to just see if there's anything there that you guys are interested in following up on, or are there any things there that you are planning on doing?
Well, her strategies and all her training was well received by all the board members and the members that did attend the training classes. We have worked very much, especially Sam, our treasurer, on our financial system, because that was a biggie with the Department of Justice. And he has put in effect many operations that were not in effect before, where we have double counting of all cash and monies that come in. We have double signature on payouts that go out. So we have many more safeguarding operations for the money that we receive and the money that we put out. It was also mentioned that accurate record keeping for our minutes in all contracts that we do with outside operations, minutes, work sessions, all that are being properly recorded by our secretary, Robert Bossinger. Actually, there was very many training strategies that she worked with, working with, I would say, volunteers, which we desperately do need, but on both sides, because we also need to know how to work with them. We have to have something to have them do. I mean, that right there is a project that I have desperately needed to work with. All in all, you mentioned an attorney for the senior center. Is that what you were saying?
Yes, I just heard that brought up at multiple junctures, that legal advice to help you all with your bylaws and some of your foundational documents would be helpful.
Well, actually today we had a virtual meeting with an attorney that Sam brought on board, which we are considering. We went over the bylaws. We're considering retaining him. So we do need an attorney, and I do realize that.
And is that attorney, are you saying he is kind of looking at your bylaws and look at revisiting? them
Right,
and redoing-
yes. So we are beating out and heading in proper directions. I feel we are.
When, so that was someone Sam knows of versus, have you guys looked at the Center for Nonprofit Law? There's the one that they recommended, they're out of Eugene. That's kind of what they specialize in, is nonprofits
Yes, this attorney is.
from that
is-
group.
is-
Anybody else up here have any recommendations or thoughts? One I do have, you had mentioned, I mean, there's some things in here that are maybe not very expensive, like the short-term goals. Like you had mentioned, volunteer coordination. You said we need more volunteers. I'd definitely like to see some kind of a coordination or effort to garner more volunteers and more support. But also on your maintenance, is there a list? I mean, is there a rule by law that's talked about if we give them the money, or they to, is it reimbursement for things that they buy? We give them the money up front and then they give us receipts. Is there anything written in that
So no, you're free to essentially issue the funds to them in whatever way you like. If you want to issue them up front, that's totally fine. If you want to issue them with no strings, you can do that. If you want to issue them with something specific in mind, you can do that too. You guys have full flexibility on that.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I have a question. So I do know that bingo is a good revenue generator for this.
Okay, you're hitting on our sore spot.
Okay.
Um, I really don't know what to tell you. We still have not got the taxes filed that we had. Excuse me a minute, Sue.
Sue, do you mind coming up to a microphone? Thank you. The bingo guru.
She's our receptionist office manager, help all. She's good.
You have to talk right into a microphone.
They filed, May 2021, the tax year 2021 already. When I called, DOJ, I have permission to start with a phone call. All I have to do is call. But as E3 isn't done, it was, extended. We still are behind for 2 years, so she needs to get done, 122 year,
So if you
Who's
finish,
she? Who has to finish?
but the accountant
Our accountant
has to
is Robert,
get it done.
is Robert Wilson, all about numbers. And actually our prominent communicator with her is our treasurer, and that's Sam Ketchum.
so they file those, you can then start bingo till the end of the year or till you file the next year's.
No, she'll,
Which is
when we
last
get
year.
this year filed, we'll start bingo up and should be good to go. I mean,
So keep,
God forbid we don't file them again. I mean,
when you say this year's, is it 2023's?
well, this year's is due May 15th. So she has until May 15th to file this year because they filed an extension. They were supposed to be filed November 15th.
I mean, 2023,
this year.
yeah,
So,
2023.
Mr. Mayor,
No bingo right now.
No,
All these are filed.
Until 20, we need 21, 22 tax year. Be
filed.
filed, and then we can start bingo. The accountant tells December 29th, she told me she had 2 weeks and they would be filed. It's been 3 weeks. I'm waiting.
So I was gonna say, there's nothing money can do to help speed that. I mean,
No.
we're waiting.
We're waiting.
That's,
Mr. Mayor.
yes.
I've got to.
So for me, going back to the core question here, for me, I would rather help prioritize things that build a stable foundation. So for me, that includes helping you with funding, whatever reviews need to take place for bylaws. But having some context with what has happened with the senior center makes me inclined to want to step back and make sure that you guys have a stable foundation to work off of going forward. For me, looking at this, that's first bylaws and any organizational type aspects. Thank you.
And if you were looking to retain the lawyer for those bylaws, you were expecting to pay him directly, right? So if we were to issue money for that, you could use that money for that.
Well, we plan on paying a retainer.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so that's 2020, well, in the next year's taxes, I mean, you have an extension on those right now.
Mm.
And then, are they starting to file those as well
I don't
next
know.
year? They
We,
have the paperwork, all the information they need.
Yeah, they have all the information you need.
Hopefully they'll have that done before this one expires.
Sam, do you want to add to that? You have to come to a microphone though. Thank you.
Name is Samuel Ketchum. I'm treasurer of the Scappoose Senior Center Board. The accountant has been working on recreating the taxes since March of 2023. It's 10 months now. He's almost done. We have filed a 1 year, fiscal year 21. We're probably a week away from filing fiscal 22. Then open up, start bingo. Literally the minute she files it, you can open bingo up. For fiscal 24,
23.
23.
23, 24. I've kept up. So
Okay.
what I do is I organize all the papers.
there's thousands, tens of thousands of pieces of paper that come into the center. Receipts, stuff from vendors and stuff. I organized that. And I then give that to Robin, who's our accountant at All About Numbers. We've created this over the last 10 months system. So the disaster that's happened in the last, let's say 5 years, will never happen again as long as I'm here. I can guarantee you that. Are there any questions?
Your mayor.
Council President Greisen.
I do want to acknowledge your work, Sam. I have seen your system. I have seen what it looked like before you got there, including boxes of papers on the floor. And I know that you've spent countless hours, hundreds of hours and days going through those things. So thank you for setting a system in place. I think that one thing that was really noted in this report was that there's a big difference between, operating a senior center and just sort of conducting general board business. And unfortunately, the current board is put in the position of doing both. And that's a lot to ask of you. So I do want to acknowledge the sacrifices that you have made in the last at least year plus to really sort of resurrect what had become a total dumpster fire. I don't know how else to say it, except you didn't burn the papers, thank goodness, so that we can file the things. I do agree with Councilor Miller in the sense that I think we're at a really pivotal point of moving the senior center in the right direction. We've really gotten to this sweet spot where we're almost there. And I think that investing the funds that we did for you guys to go through this work and for us to see this report really holds you accountable, holds us accountable. You know, $20,000 in the city budget is significant, but we believe in your work and we want to support you. I do think, they noted a suggested source for you is the Center for Nonprofit Law, which is based in Eugene, and speaking to these people that can help you with your bylaw review and revision, because you are functioning and operating the whole senior center, doing those two roles. I do think that resuming bingo is a must for me. It shows that we're in good standing, everything, and I know right now the ball's not in your court. You've done everything you can. So that is really frustrating just to wait. But that does tell us things are in good standing. Before it was get the kitchen going, but that is going, which is fantastic. So in the short term, I would like to, Alex is kind of noting that perhaps we could be a source, or we could find a source that could help with strategic planning and visioning for where you want the center to go. But in the immediate, to really clean up those bylaws, make sure we're following a system that meets nonprofit law. And I think that if there were any sort of invoices from legal counsel helping you do this, that would be, in my opinion, a good source of using the dollars that we have set aside. Once we get to that point and some of these things, are all checked off, then I would feel more comfortable sort of just handing things, handing that large budget item over. But again, Mr. Mayor and Council, I would just caution that, and again, unfortunately, you have to hold on to what the past has done. And I know you're creating a clean slate, but it's really hard sometimes to let that go, is that we would see bids ahead of time for things like the portico, making sure that those have gone through, and maybe there's 2 or 3 bids that we look at, and make sure we just help along the way and not just sending the cash over, just hoping that it works out for them, but we can kind of help and guide. So I don't personally feel comfortable right now just fully releasing those funds. I'd like to earmark them specifically for the short-term goals.
Is there anything we need to do today? I mean, we've listened, we've heard. If you wanted to put a list together of the maintenance items that you're thinking about, maybe in the rough dollars amount, so we kind of know what you're thinking. But let's wait till we see bingo. Maybe that could be happening. And and then kind of keep reviewing it. And as if you do have attorney fees from this attorney, working on your bylaws, keep those receipts. Those are things that we definitely probably be entertain helping with. And then you could use that money for something else, your maintenance.
Mr. Mayor. One other suggestion too that I would like to see, putting my business hat on here, is what's called continuity. And that is making sure that once you do get your bylaws in place and just a really thorough, good, competent understanding of the way that you operate business every day, is that you set up a training program so that everybody understands what the bylaws are and what your standard operating procedures are, and that you create redundancy. So there's not just one person that knows how to do the job, but there's at least two that know how to do that job. Because we do see turnover. So those are the types of things that would go with building a strong foundation that for me, I would really like to see. And if we can hire or work to pay for a consultant or something like that that can help out facilitate those things, I would think that that would be something that this council would be interested in doing. Yes, sir.
Sam?
We have created SOPs, financials. I've created them from beginning to end on how money is handled, how money is spent, how to track the money. I've created a detailed audit trail system so I can track literally every dollar, where it goes, where it comes from, how it's, when it goes into the bank and everything.
That's great to hear. If I may ask, is your fiscal year Jan 1 through December 31st? What is
July
your
1
July?
to June 30th.
Okay. Good to know. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I made the assumption, Clara, that you guys had seen this PSU document that outlines the sessions you had and the conclusion and recommendations. That's true. You've seen this and looked at it. Okay. So I think what we're kind of looking at is if it meets these recommendations, that is something we're willing to fund.
I feel
And
that
work on this. This is your checklist. This is your roadmap.
this is the foundation, I think, and like Mr. Miller was saying, I mean, if it's, we're starting to rebuild that foundation, and we want to see it a little bit stronger and wider before, so it doesn't fall over easily like it maybe did last time. And so I think these are the foundation things that will help. And I think these things will help you save and make more money in the long run. So if we can get to these things, especially getting bingo up and running, the sooner you get that up and running, the sooner you guys will be making that money. So I think that's what we're looking for, especially if there's things on here, I would definitely keep the receipts on those. And those are going to be things that we're really willing to look at more, more. So any more?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank
You guys are
Thank
doing a
all.
good job
Thank
and
you.
working in the right direction. Thank you.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, happy New Year.
Okay,
Come again?
now we're on to the new number 3.
Give yourselves a big pat on the back, Senior Center. Good job.
Back to interim city manager discussion. We have Ashley Driscoll online, and so we wanted to attack that. I will start on this one. If you have anything to add, Ashley, let me know. But you guys know we're looking for an interim city manager, and with the help of many, we've had some names pop up from time to time and talked to a few, and we have one that we are kind of want to focus on right now, and you've been given some information. And I think the next process is what I'm looking for tonight is an authorization to go into contract negotiations with Ashley Driscoll and myself to look at offering a contract. Is that right? Ashley?
Good evening, City Council. Ashley Driscoll with the City Attorney's Office. Yes, that's absolutely correct. My understanding is that the city has narrowed it down to one candidate at the moment. So the motion tonight after discussion is to approve moving forward with the appointment of Larry Lehman to fill the interim city council position for the city of Scappoose, and then direct the mayor and myself to enter into contract negotiations with him.
Okay, I've had a couple people come to me. We've had some more names come up from time to time. This one came up as a recommendation from Michael Sykes. And then following references, Larry Lehman, we're looking at him. He was our interim city manager back in 2014. Right before Mike Sykes, he brought him in. I think you all have his history of seeing where he's been. Talked to some of the people that have worked here for him and said very good things. I followed up on a few of his references. Got things like he thinks outside the box. He's a very hard worker. And so I do feel, talking to a few, that he would be a good fit for what we're looking for. Again, this is an interim city manager. We're hoping now to start the process of going out for that full-time city manager, which I think will definitely be more of a detailed, in-depth dive to look for a new city manager. But for the next 5 to 6 months, or as long as needed, we're looking at this interim position. Do we have any questions, concerns? Definitely feel free to reach out to him if you have any questions. Good. It looks like he's online tonight. Mr. Lehman, are you here? He said if he had good internet, he would try to jump in. If you have anything to add, Larry,
Yes,
we appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, I'm here.
Good. Is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I did enjoy working with Sue back in 2014, and hopefully I can do a good job for the city this time.
We appreciate it. You most recently were at Pendleton from 93 to 2012, city manager. You've served on the LOC board, president of the City Managers Association. You were on the CCIS board of directors for 24 years. And you were in Scappoose, so you have an understanding of us at least. And so what I'm looking for tonight is an approval to enter into negotiations to offer a contract between Ashley Driscoll and myself to Mr. Lehman.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move that we vote for you to engage in contract negotiation for our interim city manager role with Larry Lehman.
I have a motion to approve a negotiation with Larry Lehman for interim city manager from Councilor Jacobs. Any seconds? Second by Councilor Santiago. Any discussion or questions?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
do
Councilor.
we have an idea of when we are going to ask Mr. Lehman to start if approved by council?
According to your schedule, Larry, February 5th was going to be the date. That's still a good date for you?
Yes, it is.
Well, that's a day of our next meeting. So if we can get to negotiations and approved, then we'll come back at that meeting to have an approval, a vote to approve it. And probably would then start the next morning, I would assume, right? Officially. Is that right, Ms. Driscoll?
Yes, if that's what we agreed to with Mr. Lehman.
Well, wouldn't we start then February 6th if it needs to be approved on February 5th?
Technically, the start date would be February 6th.
Okay, thank you.
I understood you saying is the next day after the council meeting.
Next day after council meeting. We get snow days. Okay, we had a question there. Any more questions?
I had the opportunity to, I'd just like to say, I had an opportunity to speak with Larry Lehman several weeks ago. And I did thoroughly enjoy our conversation. I think for where we are at, for an interim role, I think he will be very helpful in guiding us over these next several months and will be very helpful in helping us as we identify our full-time city manager. So I have no hesitations with this motion.
Appreciate it, Councilor Jacobs. Seeing no more questions, all those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Larry, and hopefully Ashley and I will get together and you'll see something here in the next day or two. Couple days.
Okay,
Appreciate it.
thank you.
Ashley.
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're going to number 3. Resolution number 24-01, a resolution adopting public contracting rules and procedures and repealing resolution number 23-14. City Manager Alexander Rains, along with Public Works Contract Manager Charlotte Baker, who is online, and Assistant to City Manager Isaac Buttman, who is here, and Legal Counsel Ashley Dugill, who is online.
All right. I will just say a few quick words, and then I'll pass it off to Ashley. So I know that you very recently had updated our contracting rules to reflect the new dollar thresholds associated with certain contracting requirements. When we brought BEH on as general counsel, we did have them go ahead and we've been having them review certain documents just to make sure that, you know, they are the latest and greatest and are going to work best for the city. And she did go ahead and go through our contracting resolution and did recommend quite a few updates and changes. Most of the changes are really just simply to reflect current state law and are just making it clearer for staff to use in terms of how contract procedure needs to work. Having said that, there's a couple variations that we do want to walk through with you. So I'm going to let Ashley walk through her recommendations, and then we'll see if there's any questions.
Thanks, Alex, and good evening, Council. Appreciate you all having me here. Like Alex said, the majority of these edits are really just bringing your rules into line with your public contracting code that is required by state statute. But there are a couple places where we added some additional language. The biggest section for that is the personal services section. So state law permits you to actually adopt whatever rules you deem necessary or convenient for adopting personal services. And personal services are contracts that require a certain level of expertise. So most cities say that attorneys are considered a personal service. So are IT. Other services in that kind of vein. So you're allowed to adopt any rules that you think are necessary in that context, but we usually suggest that you follow a similar path as is required for other services, procurement of other services. So in this case, we only recommend a deviation in one regard, which is for small procurements of personal services. And so we increased the dollar threshold there to $75,000 instead of $25,000, which is the requirement for regular services. So the reason we would require that, or we would recommend that increase to 75 is that's the threshold for getting council approval regardless for a contract. And so, you know, you would be coming to council with that level of a contract regardless. For all other personal service procurements, I believe that the rules that you would be adopting would be just the same really as you would for any other goods or service contract. And then the only other place that is slightly different than state law, and that actually is an amendment to the item that's actually before you, it's a slight change in the red lines to what you actually see before you, is we're just clarifying the threshold for amendments. The language that's in state law is a little unclear, and the language that was originally in your rules just reflected that slightly unclear state language. And so we added an amendment after some further discussions, just to clarify when you can and can't amend a contract and when you have to take it back to bid, essentially. But beyond that, I'm available to answer any questions that you might have, because I know that it is kind of an extensive edit.
Councilor Miller.
Hi, Ashley. I just have 2 questions. So I just want to confirm that 279A allows the city to create their own rules, and that doesn't have to be at least as equal in requirements as the state's rules?
Yeah, so it gets a little complicated. 279A does permit you to adopt your own rules, and that's in regard to the model policy. So the model policy is what is in place if you don't do anything, and that is the OARs, 137.047 through 049. However, you do still have to follow state statute. And there are a lot of requirements for procurements still set forth in state statute. So a lot of what's here in your council rules are the pull through of state statute and then providing clarity to parts of statute that are unclear in our opinion, or that we've found in legal interpretations for, et cetera.
Okay, so I want to make sure that I'm understanding correctly. I may not be. So is it the OAR part that's amendable, or and then the ORS part stays, the model rules under the ORS under 279
So-
stay? Go ahead.
Yes, that is correct. So the
Okay.
ORS is the state statute, and the OARs are the model rules. Those are the things that you follow if you do not adopt any language on a local level.
Got it. One more question. Do we have a definition for what constitutes an emergency? Because there's some emergency clauses in some of these terms.
I believe that you do. And there is also a definition in state statute, but let me see.
We're not, so it's in statute, so that's not amendable. So we would just follow the ORS in that regard then?
Yes. You do have a definition. It's in section H. It's circumstances that could not have reasonably been foreseen, create a substantial risk of loss, damage, or interruption of service or substantial threat to property, public health, welfare, or safety, and require prompt execution of a contract to remedy the condition.
Okay, out of curiosity, are 279B and 279C also amendable in that regard as A is?
Unfortunately, no. Those are the state statutes. So you're required to follow anything that's in 279A, B, or C. You have to follow. 279A only has a section that authorizes you to adopt local rules implementing policy where those statutes are silent. So in places where they're silent are, for example, amendments. You have a little bit of flexibility of when you can and can't do amendments. What the details are for a bid, that's another situation where you have a little bit of flexibility of what you want to put in a bid and what you don't. Again, a lot of flexibility in personal services, actually. You could basically come up with an entire procurement practice if you really wanted to for personal services. But unfortunately, everything that's in 279A, B, and C, you have to follow to the letter.
Thank you. I realized as soon as I said 279, we're talking about statutes, that I was off base there. Thank you.
No, that's okay. It's confusing. I understand.
Yes, Councilors.
So with you saying that pretty much as a city, we can be flexible with our procurement policies. So according to the OAR 125-246-0500, can we implement that regulation which says that we can invite certified COBID firms to participate in solicitation processes? Would that be something that we can add, a very simple regulation that we can add to our policies?
Definitely,
right?
definitely. If
Okay.
you desired to do that, you definitely could. I don't
And
see
I
any
would
reason
like
why
to
you
add that to our procurement process.
So,
Honestly.
so would it simply be a preference, or would it be that you would be
Yeah, it's
inviting?
a preference, especially when you're talking to intermediate. And that's like, you get three quotes. That would be intermediate and large construction, but mostly intermediate. I've seen them mostly in that realm. So we can add that. That would be, yeah. It's I think it's an easy process. Correct me if I'm wrong, right?
I believe so. Yes, I think it would be in my opinion, it would be a pretty easy process. There are certain preferences, local preferences that you're permitted to give. And then there's some that you're required to give. So, that's one that you're permitted to give if you want to. You can also give an in-state preference if you want, and that's actually already in your local rules, where you can give a up to 5% preference to companies that are in state versus out of state. And then there's a few others as well. Recycled materials is one. Yeah, but definitely the COVID ones are a good option.
Counselor Miller?
I just want to be clear on what we're asking here. So we're just asking basically for new language on preference of how we select, right? So small businesses, in-state businesses, COVID certified, I don't know, sorry, okay, thanks, I don't know the right term for it. So we're just establishing basically a policy for how the city is going to award contracts to vendors, correct?
It's not award, it's basically search for, invite, especially when you're trying to look for like three options. So you can invite COVID certified firms that fall within the regulation. They can still do the work. Basically, anybody that can do the work based on their codes, on their service codes. But the COVID certification, you're just inviting certified firms that are minority, disadvantaged, women-owned firms.
So what I would ask is if council is willing to entertain this, that legal counsel then put in what's allowed by law into the preference order. Because I think some of that might get into federal
No.
law. It doesn't, okay, I don't know.
This
when
is
it comes to that,
it's
so-
a state.
Okay.
Can I ask
Isaac,
for
go ahead.
clarity? Are we asking to invite people to bid or are we giving them preference? That's,
It's two different things.
I know, I'm
Yeah.
asking, I think there's some, are we
think
we're
that's-
just
yeah.
inviting them?
I would love
Or are
a
you
reference
adding
point too.
I thought there were.
I guess that's what we're trying to understand.
'Cause I heard
is
two
the
things.
request here.
I heard preference used in two different ways. Just trying to understand is, are we asking for preference points or are we asking inviting?
First, I was saying inviting to the process, but I brought in, the attorneys brought in, I would be great, the preference point, but that would be up to council.
Is that
For
a
me-
bigger, further discussion?
I do have an issue with that. So unless it's required by law, I think my first interest is the best price to the taxpayers in the city. So I would want to be able to invite everybody. And then we come up with, what I'm saying is assumably, has to be checked legally and everything here, but I would then get into a scoring system of whatever legal counsel says that we can do. But I would rather not get into selecting who we invite and don't invite based on some sort of, I don't, my focus is going to be on getting the best price for the taxpayers.
Just to clarify, Councilor Miller, this is not just only them, it's just to invite them as well.
Okay, all right.
That's what I'm saying.
You don't start by inviting them.
No, it's just to make sure that they are invited as well.
Is that the attempt, or you're saying you want it in writing that like we shall find businesses that are COVID certified?
I'm not saying it's just, you still do the whole process of vetting, a contractor, but to just they make that one extra step and say, oh, these firms that are in COVID that fall within the codes that you're searching for, depending on whatever service, that fall under that, and then inviting them as well. Just giving them notification.
I was just trying to clarify that, a lot of times when we go out and we try to get bids, even
Right.
quotes, right? Sometimes you can't get 3 quotes. You can you document the attempt and that is still okay. That's legally defensible and allowable. But you may not always get people that meet, that criteria and also can do the work. So I guess my point would just be that whatever language goes into the rules, it's written in a way that recognizes that it's about the attempt and not actually making that happen every time, because you're not gonna be able to do it every time.
Right, especially when you don't get enough or, find the 3 codes, then you actually make the attempt to, hey, make sure you go to those COVID certified and say, well, I didn't find 3 codes or 3 people didn't come and I getting a feedback or is it me?
Not sure, but, well, I mean, no, I guess the 3 attempts would be, that's just total, but, I'm saying you could try COVID, make sure that that is in the mix. The only thing I'm saying here is just that there's not a guarantee you're going to get a bid from someone.
Not
who's
going to
certified.
guarantee, I just want them to be invited. I'm asking, so making the process of solicitation of whoever's seeking the solicitation or putting it out there to make sure that they also invite the COVID certified firms into the solicitation. That's what I'm asking.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Just to clarify, are we using a process that doesn't invite?
No.
Thank you.
So currently, I thought it wasn't. The last time that we did the regulation is like, oh, I asked this specific because it
So
was under.
nothing prevents a COVID certified business from bidding on any city contracts.
Right, but
And
we
they-
don't
they go
search.
out.
The process of us going to and searching and then inviting those firms to this process, we don't do that currently. Is that
We
right?
actually have talked about doing that. Charlotte, I don't know if you've done that recently, but we have had those discussions, actually more recently about checking those lists. But again, that doesn't stop anybody that's COVID certified from bidding on anything we have available.
Right, it's just to be invited. That's what I'm asking.
So we solicit them specifically.
Yes,
They're on a list, we specifically go after, but it's just to invite them.
right, exactly.
And then they may see it and say, okay, well, they're specifically inviting me, so maybe they give more
They
weight to
can-
it. Maybe they're more, they'll look at it. I mean,
They can choose to submit a proposal or not.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
When we go out for these sorts of things, it really is in the hands of those businesses seeking out these opportunities, correct? It's not us. So for example, if I'm a business and I'm looking to do some work, I'm going to be kind of scouring around looking for these sort of requests that are out there. Some people choose to do that, some people don't. They might not have the capacity or it's not within their scope. So it's not like it's not open to the table. Is there really a source that we have at the city level in terms of a list of these businesses?
You can go online and get a COVID certified list of businesses. You can do that. It doesn't mean that in every instance where you go out and put out a bid, right, depending on the services you need, that you'll find a company that necessarily
Sure.
offers those services. And sometimes we do need something that's very, very specialized where not a lot of, we sometimes don't get a lot of options. I mean, sometimes we're lucky to get 2 responses even
Sure.
to a full blown RFP process. But yes, I mean, there is a place where we could seek out, a list of COVID certified businesses. You could do that.
you get a list, you have to go out to each one individually and send them request quote.
So
Or
then,
you send it to the list and they send it out
You-
to all of them.
You can do that. So basically, once something is posted publicly, you are allowed to then share it with whoever you want, because at that point you wouldn't be giving them any kind of preferential treatment or a leg up by giving them more time with the materials or anything like that. So you could reach out to them directly. Just depends on, again, what you're
Sure.
doing and if those companies would do that work.
So owning a business and having gone through this, we subscribe to a service called BidSync. It's owned by Periscope. And basically that's a service that combines I get an email every day with all the different RFPs that are open, and I keyword search it to see if there's anything comes up for my company. I think perhaps if we're not already doing it, this is an assumption, that we find out a way to basically submit our opportunities to those different companies that provide those services, because the benefit to the city, of course, is that those companies have a wide reach to all the people that subscribe to their service, like I do, for example. One of my other questions was, and I think Councilor Greisen hit on this, was, do we have any sort of software or do we subscribe to anything? Is there anything even in existence at the city level that you can punch in those codes? I know the NAIC codes are what you're talking about. I know what you're talking about, because every company is supposed to identify with them, and it identifies what services you provide, and then it matches opportunities to your company. Do we even subscribe to anything like that or have access to anything like that?
We don't subscribe, but the state manages a database. I'm actually on it right now.
Okay.
It's very easy to navigate through the codes. Find kind of business you're looking for. So I'm actually on there right now under Highway, Street, and Bridge, and it goes all the way down to abutments, roads, subsurface.
So if I understand Councilor Santiago's concern, it's just that she wants to ensure that those certified companies get invited every time. If you're referring to Oregon Buys, is that like a feature that they have to make sure that those opportunities go out to those companies, or how does that work?
I don't know. I'm just looking at Oregon Business or Business Oregon. But
Okay.
That's
where
COVID,
the
yeah.
Why I'm asking these questions is because I'm trying to make sure that we're not asking you to do something that is too time consuming or not even really realistic for our city. If it is, then great, I think we should do it, but there's considerations here.
Then are we requiring you to do it on every job or all of them, or, you know, all intermediates, or as you see fit?
The process is just going into the COVID directory and then typing in the codes like you would in Oregon Buys or anything, and companies pop up. This is just to encourage that that we are inviting diverse, small businesses, women-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses into, to the solicitation. That's all it is. And there's already a regulation that is already the OAR 125 dash 246. So always, if we are saying in page 1 that as a city we can be flexible when adopt our own procurement methods, that's what I'm asking, just to make sure that we have that regulation into our procurement process. That's it. It's a matter of just going to COVID directory, looking for, especially when there is the intermediate procurement, when they're asking for 3 quotes, that could be an option. That's all I'm saying.
What we were looking at tonight, to adopt a resolution. Yeah, Ashley, do you have any feedback or any thoughts on that?
On the minority-owned business part, the COVID part?
Yes.
I think that it would be fine if you wanted to proactively advertise in the way that you were talking about on any of those websites that you were discussing. I do think that it's a separate thing if we're talking about giving a preference. If you're just looking at the lowest responsible bidder, so if you're doing just a straight bid, it would be a little bit more difficult to do a preference. But if you're doing an RFP, if there's a situation where you already have a variety of factors, you can always build in whatever factors you want. And if you want to add this as a preference, you definitely can. But on the front side of it, from your original question, I wouldn't see an issue if you wanted to start making that a new city policy of proactively advertising to certain groups. If you also advertise it in the way that you originally planned, which is, on the city website or in a newspaper of general circulation or what have you.
Are we able then to adopt 2401 as it is? And this is something that is separate or goes in, or would that have to be added to this before we adopt it?
If you wanted this to be, Go
You'd
ahead,
want
I
to adopt
apologize.
it with an amendment.
Is that,
So I guess what I'd want to understand from Ashley is where would this go? Because I know that obviously this is broken down into, different basically rules and instructions for different types of procurements. So where would it realistically?
So just so I can make sure I'm understanding entirely, would this be a requirement or at least a preference to proactively advertise on certain websites that have access to minority owned and women owned businesses? Would that be the goal?
I believe the goal, it seemed like, was COVID certified. I think I'd be hesitant to say anything about a specific website because if it changed over time, then your document's out of date. So calling out the fact that it's COVID certified might be the safest thing.
So proactively advertising on COVID certified websites.
Right.
is there a way to adopt?
Or at least solicit or I don't even know if
I wouldn't even say website.
I wouldn't even say advertising on the website. I think I would just say contacting businesses that are COVID certified to attempting to contact them to encourage them to submit a quote.
Actually, again, actually, I'm going to quote the OAR 125-246-0500. And it says agencies must use Oregon Buys to invite certified COVID firms, and that's basically the COVID directory, to participate in solicitation process.
Would that end up being under all personal services, all services, all procurement?
That's part of what I'm asking though too, is
So-
that this is outlining a lot of different ways to procure things. So what are we talking about here?
Yeah, this is a, this statutory, or this, administrative rule that you're looking at is actually the state requirements. It's the requirements for the state of Oregon. You can, you can use the process if you want, but these are the administrative rules that I was referencing, those model rules that
Right.
it's not necessarily a requirement for cities.
Right.
You can
But we
choose
can
that
choose.
process.
Yeah.
Yes.
And choose that
Mhm.
process.
Can
Correct.
we adopt this resolution and then try to find where and how that would be amended and added? Later time, I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking like the intermediate procurement, when you do three effective contractors, and the large procurement.
So it to me, what it sounds like you're saying is for intermediate and large procurements, if and when practical and possible, the city will attempt to reach out and or advertise to individuals on Oregon Buys, in addition to their typical advertisement processes. Is that right?
That would be great. Yes.
And then again, this is personal services, or there other parts of you'd have to adapt to, amend as well? Buying equipment. Or is this
That
just
was, and that
under
was part of my
personal
question was that, is this, because, Councilor Santiago's only been talking about this first page, but this whole document, there's, is outlining different procurement methods for different items. So is this, right, there's all kinds of different ways and different rules depending on what it is we are acquiring.
Is it enough changes that we wait and look at it all at once and adopt it all at one time versus?
So we can do that, or you can just tell us to put it in a place where it would apply to everything, and we could do that, and you could just simply state that it would be approved with that amendment, and we can approve it tonight. It's up to you.
Actually,
If I may make a recommendation, why don't, I think we all got the point, and I think legal counsel understands the point too. Why don't we have them come back with proposed language that's legal and best tries to meet what Counselor Santiago is saying, and then we deal with it at the next council meeting.
We would not spend as much time because we've gone over everything else.
Correct.
Anything else we're good with?
One would hope not.
And that would just be quick.
Maybe, no promises.
But Ashley, I think what you had just verbally reiterated to us sounded like it was agreeable and everyone was on the same page. So I think writing up something to that effect would make sense for the next meeting.
Yeah, I don't see any issues with it just off the
Okay.
top of my head, but of course I'd want to confirm that offline, draft you some language, and then we could go from there.
Okay.
thank you.
And then generally speaking, though, it does sound like all the other changes were acceptable and we're not, okay.
It was great.
All right.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Next, purchase of American flags and hardware.
I heard you.
Public Works Director Dave Sukow.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So back in August, we had a discussion about American flags and the installation of those on national holidays. It sounded like there was definitely a desire to pursue this. There was an idea that I believe Councilors Grayson and Miller came up with to mount them along the highway on the light poles. It took a little work with ODOT, but we did persuade them to be okay with that. Hopefully the staff report reflects that well. So we would just procure brackets, have the PUD assist us with installing those high enough to be above vehicle clearance heights, which would be 14 feet. And our public works crew would go out with ladders on the day of the events and install them. Other than bringing a bucket truck out, I don't think we would need to do that at 14 feet. And so really, I just need to know if this is something that you want me to move forward with.
One question I came up is, you had to submit a permit application every time. Is there a fee associated with the permit application?
You know, I don't know if it is. It's probably fairly nominal. It's going to be much.
And do you have to be licensed qualified to hang these, or can you invite council up to help and other people as well?
He doesn't want the liability of that.
I'm sure if you would like to do it, you can.
I won't get very.
I love that you volunteered them for that.
There's a honk at me as they drive by.
I'm sure you're insured through the city to do such a thing, but.
Questions?
What holidays, Dave, what holidays would they? be
Anything
going
that's
on?
flag appropriate, to me is Flag Day, Memorial Day, 4th of July, those types of things.
Veterans Day.
Veterans Day.
Okay. And then would they go up for just the day or for the entire week or the month? Like how?
Honestly, that can be determined by you all. That was part of the discussion is we decided to use those light poles because they have lights and so it would follow flag etiquette. They would be lit to stay up for longer duration. We have that flexibility once they're there. We could create a list, the dates and times and things that they would go. Right at this point, that part hasn't been completely dialed in. Mostly just, do we want to
Like
done?
based on the effort, you want at least a week, but
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
just, I mean,
Full month of July.
right, yeah, there you go.
I mean,
Summer.
in theory, you'd have the flexibility, yeah, to leave them out for a month or the summer. I mean, whatever you want to do, they'll be.
How well they're built, how long they were gonna last. I mean, they'll probably look good.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, the brackets are cast. The poles, I believe, are aluminum, so everything is resilient to the weather and stuff. So
Dave, I don't know all the rules, but I know there are rules related to taking down, putting up, and storage of those flags. So I would just ask that we research that and be respectful of that and know what those are before we get into handling that, just to make sure that we're respectful of the flag.
I did notice that we didn't get notification it was going to happen, but one of the holidays, it was an off one. All of a sudden, flags showed up on the highway.
Mhm.
I don't know if the veterans did that. Or we're not really sure who put them up. But there are some old brackets that are still on a few of the businesses, and ooh, they were there.
On
So-
poles. On a pole.
No, on little brackets attached to some of the businesses. So
Mhm.
we could work with the veterans and stuff.
Boy Scout. at the
Yes, we
front
would
of
definitely
every
follow
letter.
etiquette.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you for doing that.
I do have one additional question. I don't see it in here, but how many flags are we talking about?
30-ish.
Okay.
It's like 28 poles, so I'd buy 30 flags.
Any more questions? Any suggested motions?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move that council approve the procurement and installation of American flags and hardware not to exceed $3,000 for the purpose of flying American flags on appropriate holidays.
Motion by Council President Grayson. Council to approve the procurement and installation of American flags and hardware not to exceed $3,000 for the purpose of flying American flags on appropriate holidays. Any seconds?
Second.
Second by Councilor Miller. Just more discussion.
Thank you, Dave, so much for looking into this. Appreciate it.
Be
Be done
special.
right.
It's
Be
gonna be
great.
neat.
Yeah. Thank you.
Seeing none, all those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Dave. Okay, we're on to RFP 2023-10 Community Branding Project. NJ Johnson, Associate Planner, and Alexander Rain, City Manager.
I am filling in for NJ. He's online, but
Speak.
he's, yeah. So, one of your goals this year, objective number one, was to identify a process for community branding. We did have meetings with the Economic Development Committee and you all to talk about the scope of work and what you were all really looking for. We went ahead and put out that RFP and actually were really shocked to receive 11 proposals, which is very atypical. So we've had a chance to really dive into and review those proposals. And we're looking for some guidance from you all this evening because what we found was that even though we had budgeted what seemed like a healthy sum in order to do this project, every single proposal is over our stated budget. Some, not by a lot, but still by some amount upwards of almost, $200,000 kind of thing. So what we're really wanting to understand at this juncture is, given that before we continue essentially to move forward and attempt to, negotiate a contract, which, perhaps we'd be able to get close to our budget, perhaps not, is, how do you all feel about that price tag? Do you still feel that this is a good use of funds before we go ahead and schedule interviews or move forward? At this point, also, if we were to say change a part of the RFP packet and go back out for a short amount of time to try to get some additional information and see who might be able to bring their price down, obviously that would take additional time as well. So, we did lay out some options for you all to consider and are just really looking for some guidance on how you're feeling about this project at this point.
Thought I read this in there. We did not specify our budget in
No,
the
so
RFP.
you're correct. So we actually had a very specific conversation about that with council, and I completely, I thought it was a good idea at the time that we didn't include it. It's not that they couldn't necessarily have records requested that information from us, but nobody did. But this is the risk you take, right? Because the hope always is that if you don't tell them your budget, maybe someone comes in under your budget. This is one of those times where that did not, that gamble did not work out in our favor and everyone came in over our budget. So it's not to say that perhaps nobody would be willing to bring their price down. But again, it's, the recommendation from legal is that if we're going to use any kind of different criteria or we want to weigh more heavily that the criteria associated with cost because of what we received back, we would have to go back out, open it up for a couple more weeks, see who was willing to bring their price down, and then go from there and do the interviews at that point. So again, we're just, we could spend more on this, but then you're looking at budgeting more money the next fiscal year than the 50,000 already allocated. So we just felt like it was, it made sense to check in with you all kind of prior to moving forward, given we had received.
Thank you. Counselor Santiago?
I thought I was trying to find it. I think you were saying in the document, it said that the ones that were proposers didn't really get the idea of what you were looking for. This was not the RFP, right? There's this is a document, like a summary. Doesn't say all of the scope of work,
So the scope of work is in this document. If you go to page.
this is not the actual the RFP that they responded to, correct?
Yes, it is. It's based on all the feedback we received from EDC and council.
And so I was just wondering, because there is, for example, there is some requirements, for example, a frequency recommended by consultants that will host reoccurring projects coordination with city staff. It really doesn't say how many, or it's very just broad. And then same thing with regular meetings at EDC and multiple city council work sessions. So I'm wondering, because there wasn't any specific, they just kind of gave a big number of, and maybe if we were more specific on meet with the council 3 or meet with the with EDC a certain amount, maybe that amount wouldn't be so big.
I would say that because this is a request for proposal, usually they are left intentionally a little bit more vague because we're trying to see what these professionals recommend that we do.
Right.
We're specifying that we want those touch points and those interactions, but we really want to see what they think they need for that. Again, the only thing we really could have done probably hugely different in terms of we could have told them our budget, but ultimately we decided not to do that. When you're doing more of an invitation to bid, you're usually much more specific. You're listing out, items and quantities and saying, hey, give me a price for these things. Proposals, you really want it more open-ended because you want to see what they're gonna recommend to you.
Right. And so did you find the person, maybe you got one, I think there was a 58,000 or something like that to 100 and something thousand. Which one was the closest bidder? And do you think you can sit down with that particular bidder and negotiate, discuss basically a pricing? Because you do quote ORS 279, and then that the contracting agency shall mutually discuss and refine the finalized scope of work, rates, and numbers. So maybe we can come to a more mutual.
So I think at this point, the recommendation from legal is that if we go ahead and want to weigh price more heavily, is that the cleanest thing right now would just simply be to actually reopen this up again for say 2 weeks, say what the budget is, and see who's willing to bring their budget in closer to what our stated budget actually is. So if we want to do that and we want to move forward, that's probably the best way to do that in terms of making sure we're following appropriate contract law, and allowing us to weight that price point more heavily in the review process.
So the person that I'm asking, the person or the proposer that was closest to what, kind of got it, were they the closest? Were they the lowest? Or were they in the scale?
They were the lowest.
Were the lowest?
The average was around 80 to 90,000. And the highest was 175.
And when can we negotiate that with,
We would have to run the process and score everybody to see if they prevailed or not. We
Well, I think I think the idea here is that we would open it back up and change the criteria slightly to make price weighted more heavily. We'd state our budget and see if they're willing to work with us essentially. So
Does contracting laws not allow you to just arbitrarily pick a few and then renegotiate? I mean, because the RFP
really-
did not have a fee involved.
didn't have a fee involved, but also it laid out a criteria on how we grade and judge their proposals. And if we want to weigh more heavily or lean more heavily on price as more important, essentially, then you're changing the criteria. And that's when you start to get into a sticky situation because you're not using the stated initial criteria.
Did they give pretty detailed quotes explaining what their 50,000 was gonna buy them or their 100,000 was gonna, I mean, 3 meetings and this, or did they
Some are more
just say
detailed than others.
it's
To
across
be honest, it's, yeah.
everything from really, really good to really, really not.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to maybe offer 2 additional considerations for the next step on this. So the Columbia Economic Development Team is very close, I understand, to wrapping up their branding exercise. Would it be possible to contact the person who undertook that work and say, hey, you're obviously very familiar with
We did that.
They already,
location? Okay, and that was not an option. Okay. And then I guess the second one I would put out for consideration is, the Economic Development Committee did seem to kind of have a vision for this process. Do we kind of circle back with them and ask if they would like to take more of a kind of leadership role in tackling some of this work?
I think the question really at the end of the day is, are they really willing to take on that level of effort? Because staff don't have capacity to really take that on, nor are we branding professionals, right? None of us have a training or background in putting together a city brand. So, if we wanted to take something like the 100-year logo that was brought, everything brought up by Councilor Miller at one point, that, just simply modify that to make that your new seal. I think something like that could be very doable by a group. But again, I think it's just more a question of, do they actually want to take on the level of effort and work that would really go into that? Like, do they want to take the scope that's in here and do that for you in the city?
One part of me, I mean, I really appreciate NJ and all the work you guys have done on this and that we've done on this. I learned a lot from it. And kind of one part says at the end, we're just buying a logo. We now kind of know who we are. Going through all these processes and talking and all these meetings, we've got a good sense of kind of where we're going and what we want to do. But do we need, one question I keep, do we need this? Do we need to dive into the scope and really go through all this process?
Yes. So, I kind of have, for me personally, I kind of have a problem paying $50,000 for a logo design.
And if I, get me right then, if we did change, one of them was rename the goal, update the city's logo, probably wouldn't be $50,000.
Correct. So one option we had discussed was, if you worked with a local graphic designer, maybe like Dan Rocha or someone like that, take the, perhaps the 100-year and just modified it to make it the new city seal. You could do something like that and it'd probably be a very, very, minimal cost comparatively speaking to a $50,000 price or plus price tag.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I might not be on the same page here. I'm curious. The big question for me is what prompted us needing a new logo? What's wrong with my understanding about the branding that came from Paul and EDC was it's not a logo, it's not an image, a visual, it's a brand and it's an idea, it's a feeling when you come to Scappoose. That's something different. So I'm trying to understand why I don't know the conversations that came out with the work that you did with those groups, but I'm not saying I like it. I'm not saying that we don't need a new one. I'm just curious what came about from this branding work in who we are and what we are as Scappoose that I guess I'm just not in the loop.
I think what happens when you go through a branding exercise is ultimately you also get collateral that goes along with that. So it would ultimately change what our logo is. So that's like one piece of the work. Um, and over the course of time, I've heard feedback about our logo, and so I could see how changing the logo could definitely serve as like one step towards improving our aspect of our brand. I'm actually just gonna say how what I kind of think where we're at in this. Honestly, I personally think we should go with recommendation 4. I think we should remove this. We should table this until we get a new city manager. I think until we get further to completion of the 50-year committee and understand exactly what's coming out of that. I do believe branding is very important for the city, but I think there's too many things that are in flight right now that there's ideas and thoughts that are just not being pulled together. We do need a consultant for that, but again, I do feel very strongly that we should probably table something like this until we bring a new city manager on board and have that conversation with them and have them work with us in moving this project forward.
Looking at looking at the other three, I mean, if these are the motions that I think most of you feel that are available, I'd almost say like, no, 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 and then that's the one that's available. I mean, if you don't pick the other three, that's kind of where you are at this time. And maybe it's not remove as much as table,
I think it's a table.
but does anybody feel comfortable adding more money to the scope to get to where one of these would be within our budget? Reopen it and like just put $50,000 on there, and then some of them might come back and really lower what they'll do, but we're still gonna spend $50,000 on a down version because of gonna have to cut a bunch, or do we rename it and like a logo, and then hopefully that would then start spurring on that. I don't really feel personally, I didn't really spend that much money on it when I think there's a lot of stuff we can do ourselves.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I will say, I mean, at least we can say that we met goal 1, objective 1. We identified a process, and I think that's the value of goal setting and having the consultant really help us zoom in on attainable goals. And, it wasn't go through all this and come out with this outcome within a year. But we identified the process, and now we get to choose whether we move forward or not. I think that that's still an accomplishment, right? And we get to make a choice. It wasn't all a waste. Check it off.
I personally definitely don't think it was a waste. I mean, it set the tone. I mean, this will be, this probably need this down the road. And it, like I said, it helped me learn a lot, but I do think, being fiscally responsible here, I think there's a lot of other things right now that probably are a little more pressing.
I just define.
Yes, please.
So one of the things I like about RFP processes that don't list the dollars is you're kind of asking the market, like, what do you? This RFP went to the market and said, what's it going to cost? And so we got a really big, good sample. And really the cost for this is like 75 to 80,000. Next time, that's probably where we need to look at is to really look at that level. So we're prepared for reasons. Because we really did a lot of.
I would like to maybe look at if look at those and say, what are you getting us? Is 50,000 was kind of for what I thought, but if that's 75 and they're giving us a lot more stuff than I would have thought, then maybe I'd be willing to spend the extra if I was getting more in return. But
I don't know that we're really getting more than we thought though, right? I
Yeah.
think we just under budgeted. We underestimated the market for this. It's just gonna cost more than you thought.
I mean, everything you guys put in here, I did think is what we wanted. We wanted to have meetings and groups. Well, that's all going to cost money and add up. And to dumb it down, to cut that back, we're going to not get as much stakeholder engagement.
Well, that community engagement's really one of the biggest expenses you're gonna have with a process like this, is where a lot of the money is going, or, those types of meetings and all the preparation that goes into them, and then the debriefing afterwards and collecting all the information, and, that costs a lot.
There's some things like, for example, I think it was called out to watch all the YouTube videos and things like that. I was like, that's a lot of videos to watch, which adds an hourly rate to the, to their cost. So I don't know. I'm just thinking there's a lot of, I kind of agree with everyone in the sense that uh, the EDC has been working on this and we should see a little bit what they're coming out with. I think the EDC should be more involved in this process. And I wouldn't want to spend more than 50,000 personally right now.
Well, then I look at, my recommendation is to maybe table it for now, really look at what CET is coming out with and theirs. What did they get for it? Maybe find out how much it's cost. What was their process and what did they get for it, and see in a future time if that's something we want to.
So I'm in agreement with number 4. I don't feel comfortable paying that much, but I do want to offer some food for thought here really quick. There's a very distinct difference in between trying to come up with a brand and identity for a commercial purpose versus a city government. And again, this is just food for thought. If I was going to develop a brand with an image for the city, it'd be something that's not movable, something that's permanent, something that is about, we have the mountains, we have the river, you can't really go wrong with those things. That is who we are. Those are the natural things that are here. They're not going to change. But there does need to be a realization that there is a much different branding exercise for commercial purposes. And that's what we've heard a lot of talk about, is about commercial based branding. And that's not what this is. So again, I just offer that for food for thought. Thanks.
Kind of seeing what CET, which is more commercially based, looking at business, but
They're really focusing on tourism. That's
Yeah,
their primary
and
driver.
personally, right now, we don't have any huge tourist attraction that we would want to just really go out market. We're not ready for Chapman Landing's not ready for a million kayakers yet. We're not ready for Vista. The bike trails aren't there yet, and so I think we're not quite there yet.
I think we're overthinking it.
Should invest in Whoville.
Mr. Mayor.
There you go. Bill.
So I guess that maybe my background knowledge is not the same as others. So I'm hearing that like some people have already done some of these like this is asking this consultant to come in, do these meetings, conduct this stuff. And I know that it's on a larger scale with the community, but it seems like in some sort of a scale, these meetings have already taken place in terms of branding exercises. And I'm not privy to that information, nor have we shared those discussions. And so it seems like some front loading's been done, and maybe that's helpful in the scope of what we present in another RFP, is that some work has already been done and this is where people have gotten. Or I'm just curious, like, if that's already,
I don't know that I would say there's a lot of.
was that
work
like
that's
the independent thing, like exercise that occurred in EDC, or?
So there were
Okay.
several meetings with economic development because the idea was to make sure that whatever scope of work was put together was reflective of what EDC was looking for, what you all were looking for, and just making sure that everyone was on the same page. Because I think there, even to Councilor Miller's point, I think there was sometimes different ideas in people's heads about what this was going to do or accomplish. So I think any front loading work that you're talking about, I think was really about actually coming up with the process and the scope, not so much like a specific brand endpoint, but was really the process. Like, what would this look like? How would we involve the community, et cetera?
That's how I see it, but some things were mentioned tonight that made it seem like other discussions had occurred or they sort of landed on some themes already.
No, I mean, I think there was a thought that, well, maybe we take in the 100-year and retrofit it for a permanent use or purpose or something like that, as an alternative, only because there was, we definitely all kind of had sticker shock, right, when we got these proposals back and saw how expensive this was. But really, for the most part, any kind of pre-work has really been the committee work and then the work that you all were privy to.
So do we want to make a decision or any approvals tonight? We need to give staff some direction. Would hold tight if taking a straw poll, hold tight. We have goal setting within a week and we'll talk about it a little bit more then on.
But I guess we would just want to make sure, and I should have wrote this out here, but just making clear that we'd be canceling the RFP and letting the people who'd submitted bids know that we are not moving forward, just that everyone's clear that we're not putting them on ice. We're saying, no for now.
Yes, I guess a suggested correction would be to table goal number 1, objective number 1 from the list of council goals, cancel the RFP and take no further action on community branding at this time.
And cancel the RFP.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I make a motion as you just stated.
A motion to remove goal number 1, objective number 1 from the list,
Table.
cancel the RFP and take no further action on community branding. Any seconds?
Correction, Mayor, that we table, not remove.
Are you okay with table?
I'm okay with table, but we're not removing. Yes, just wanted
Move
to
goal number 1.
table.
Table goal number 1.
Which we're talking about goals on Saturday, so it's,
Yeah.
yeah, we'll deal with it then.
And cancel the RFP and take no further action on community branding. Any seconds?
Second.
By Counselor Jacobs, any discussion or question?
I do have just a suggestion. Next time, I guess it was more like an RFI, meaning information, because we were just trying to get information. So, we won't have to do this in the future. Saying like an RFP, be making an RFI. I'm just for information, because it was more about, we wanted to get information. I'm just suggesting. That's just.
We really wanted their proposals on how they would do this project. So I would still say that this was an RFP.
I'm just, that's just my suggestion. But
Any further discussion? Those in favor state by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you guys for all your work on that. Appreciated. Calendar, we're on to this Thursday, January 25th. We do have a planning commission meeting at 7 PM. And then Saturday, January 27, we do have our council retreat and goal setting session, 9 AM at PCC OMEC. That's all I have. Last update, city manager Alexander Rains.
Sorry. No, she's whispering. I'm like, what? Yeah, no, it's at PCC.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it at 8:30 or
Is it not?
9?
Well, it's open at 8:30 if you want to like come in and get coffee and food, but it starts at 9. Yeah, exactly. If you want-
Yeah.
Okay, I was like,
Send 'em out. You have this being recorded, right?
right, yeah.
Last- Want to hear Alex's last update.
My last update. Okay. Well, I actually did want to start with welcoming Brian back. So he's gonna be here.
Deja vu.
Yeah, right.
All over.
So for any of you who don't know know him, he's been interim for us before over on the police side. He's our public safety director. So he'll be serving, actually indefinitely at this point, which is great. So we have some solid leadership in the police department right now, which is awesome. And then I guess just, in terms of it being my final official meeting, but I will see you all on Saturday. But just that I really am very grateful for all my time here, everything I got to do, everything I got to learn. I know he's not here, but having someone like Michael who was really willing to let me have a lot of leeway and do things I'd never done before, but just because he trusted I could figure it out. And just kind of what a difference that made. And then just how much, holding this current role has changed the way I work and how I look at things and what I feel capable of doing in the future. And I do really appreciate all the time I got to spend with staff. Team here is really, really good. I've been able to meet a lot of different city managers, a lot of different folks in this field. And you guys, you really do have a really, really good team here. So, I hope that they all stick around and keep doing good work together. And, I wish you all really all the best. And again, I'll see you Saturday. So, going on, but yeah, just thank you all. And that's it for me.
Never get Scappoose out of you now.
Oh.
Yeah. Mr. Jensen, welcome.
Yes, thank you for those I haven't met, Ryan. Just a couple of things. Well, first of all, thank you for having me back. Like I said when I left, I really enjoy the community. I enjoy the support of the city. Everything is fantastic. The drive isn't that great. I live in Tualatin, but that's the worst thing I got going for me. I think we're doing okay. So thank you. Just a couple updates on the PD. So we have one of our officers is currently in the field training program. He's kind of getting towards the tail end. We've identified some internal issues with our training program that we're tightening up. So his training is going to be extended a little bit, and then we'll kind of reevaluate and see where he's at. We have another officer down at the academy right now, down in Salem. He's scheduled to graduate at the end of March. He's doing fantastic down there. He's sending us weekly updates, and he's really learning a lot and really scoring himself away, which is nice. We are working here on what we're going to do with him when he gets back. As far as we want to have something solid so he can just come and hit the ground running and have a plan in place. So we're currently working on that. All the other officers and the lieutenant are staying. No one is leaving. So that's really good for us. There's a really solid young group back there, but they're all seem to be motivated and the morale seems to be on the rise, which is good. So I think that we're really picking things up over there. We've begun small weekly training sessions with the guys back there. Wednesdays is a common day, so we have all our officers are in. So we've started that. It's 15-minute, 30-minute sessions. We're going to focus on kind of the low frequency, high liability issues, right? Use of force, those sort of things, just to make sure that they are aware of current case law. Make sure that they're going with the best practices on those things that again are low frequency but very high liability. We're also working on like just basic search and seizure stuff. How do you interact with the community, right? How do you interact with folks that are in crisis? Those sort of things. We're trying to really just give them just little dabs here and there just to get, like I said, these are young guys. So it's really important that we kind of really mentor them and teach them how to be law enforcement officers and those sort of things. So we're taking an active role in their continuous learning. We are working on the inventory. The council has asked us to inventory some of our items. We're working on that. We've run into a couple of not issues, but a little couple hiccups. But we're going to be getting that to you as soon as we can. It's a priority for us over there, as I know it is for you guys. We're really going to work on that. You guys have any questions for me?
I do.
Yes.
Your one officer in field training, is he local or or Columbia County? Is he being trained here right now by our own guys?
He is back here with us now. He did do some of his training prior to me coming out here. He was with the county, but he is currently back with us right now. He's working with Sergeant Larson, who is our field training officer, as well as Lieutenant Llewellyn. So the three of us have met, and like I said, we're really gonna kind of tighten the screws on our field training program to make sure we're putting our best foot forward.
Anything else?
Ryan, can you, just for the people that don't know you, can you just touch on your experience a little bit, your background?
Yeah, sure. So I retired from Clackamas County Sheriff's Office in December of 21. I was in law enforcement as an officer for 28 years. And I retired in December of 21 and my background, I was a K-9 officer. I was a member of the SWAT team. I was a DRE, which is a drug recognition expert. So it's like really working on, folks that get pulled over for DUI, but they're not drunk, right? They're high or on meds or anything like that. They'd call me and I could figure out what they're doing. Should have brought my resume. I didn't know I was getting this is all by memory, and I'm getting older now. So let's see. It seems like it was a long time ago.
Let me help you, Sergeant.
Yeah, I was a sergeant.
PIO.
I was a public information
Lieutenant.
officer. I was a lieutenant. I was a watch commander. I was in charge of our search and rescue, our dive team, our marine team.
Cool.
I was a leadership and ethics instructor for the state. So,
And a lot of,
Google it.
yeah, that was all at Clackamas County, basically.
at Clackamas County, I
Have
worked
all those
for
options.
about 4.5 years down at the coast when I first started in North Bend. So I do have that small community leasing experience, which is valuable to have that experience. And then I moved up to Clackamas in August of '98. So yeah, there you go. That's me in a nutshell.
When you did work with Clackamas, did you ever work with like the Wilsonville,
Yeah, so I I did, actually, I was assigned to the contract city of Wilsonville for about almost 2 years, as a sergeant. And so I do have experience with our contract cities. And then as a watch commander, I was, worked closely with the basically the other chiefs of police that were in those cities and make sure that, worked on staffing, worked on things like that. So I do have some experience.
Welcome. Thank you.
You owe me coffee time.
All right.
I wasn't ready.
Counselor Jacobs,
Nothing at this time. Thank you.
Counselor LaFrance.
First, welcome Interim Chief Jensen. Alex, I just want to thank you for everything you've done for the city. Most of it was before I came, but nonetheless, thank you. And I will say that you obviously had your hands full this year with a lot of new counselors. Just personally, you helped me a lot answering questions, no matter how small or dumb. And then just reaching out proactively. I really appreciate that. So I'm grateful for letting me get on board. Thank you.
Thank you.
My notes.
Counselor Holmes.
Hey,
Oh, no, thank you, Alex. Thank
Counselor
you.
Santiago.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Whoa.
Well,
Big pass.
after that resume review, it confirms what I already suspected. We're very fortunate to have you. So thank you for spending your time with our community and helping out the department. Alex, yeah, thank you so much for your help this year getting us up and running. Your door was always open. We didn't always see eye to eye on things, but I think it also speaks volumes when you can have really productive conversations around hard things with folks. So I always appreciated your approach to that and handling of that too. And I really wish you the best.
Thank you. Counselor Miller.
That's okay.
Counselor Santiago. Please. Counselor Miller. Sure.
Oh my stars.
We've got 10 minutes.
First, is to Alex. Alex, thank you very much for everything that you've done and putting up with me as well. But I know I can be a pain sometimes. But again,
Step is acknowledging. Good job.
Yeah, right. I wish you the best of everything in Oregon City in your career. I'm sure that won't be the last place that you stop, but it's very apparent that you're extremely talented and have a lot of very, very good skills that government entities are going to be really fortunate to have. So from the bottom of my heart, I really do say thank you, and I wish you the best of luck in your career. Chief, well, it's a mouthful. Is it interim public
It's
safety
Brian.
director?
It's
Brian Jensen. Thank you again for coming back and helping us out. Just really quick, just go over a couple of county commissioner meetings that I've attended in my role as liaison there. My notes go on the January 3rd, 2024 meeting. The new emergency management director, his first name's Corey. I can't pronounce his last name. I don't quite remember what it is either. But anyway, he presented a new emergency management plan for Columbia County. And larger cities have their own emergency management departments often, and they come up with their own plans and yada, yada. However, smaller cities like Scappoose, we defer to the county's emergency management plan. So as I was listening to him present to the county commissioners his plan for adoption, it became apparent that we probably need him to, or interface with him to come in and give city council a overview of what the emergency plan is and how that impacts Scappoose. Seems like something that we'd really be interested in. So maybe we talk about that more during goal setting, but that seems like a prudent thing that we probably should do. The other big thing that has happened at the county commissioner meetings was on January 10th, they had a public hearing regarding the lack of a term revised next renewable fuels application for Claskenai. I couldn't stay for the whole thing because it went on for hours and hours and hours. But what was really apparent is there was a lot more people opposed to it that gave public testimony than people for it, which I think we could probably all surmise why that would be. So I don't know where they're at with that right now. I will go to the next county commissioner meeting and also talk to the commissioners and kind of see what they can say so far and give an update at the next city council meeting about that. Happy New Year.
They did put that in the there is a little article in the paper of kind of where they are right now. There's some, it's still waiting, the time limit, and then at their next meeting, I think they'll make a decision.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Counselor Miller. Counselor Santiago.
Okay. Well, Happy New Year, you're right. It's been a while since our last meeting, so, and I know I attended some events and I can't remember what, but a lot of them have been canceled as well. So Park and Rec meetings have been canceled, but thank you, Alex. Everything that, that my fellow counselor said is correct. They're on point. You'll do great. Good luck with everything that you're going to do. And we appreciate your hard work. Brian, we haven't met yet, but looking forward to it. I love just everything you said, and so I'm very excited. And that's it. That's all I have.
Thank you. Council President Grayson.
The list. Start with Dave. I got a personal thank you today about how Public Works handled the weather. A lot of people, complain about the lack of plowing in certain areas, but this person happened to have great plowing and gravel down, and they just were so appreciative of that. I think it's hard for a lot of people to understand our capacity with plowing and also just sort of the repercussions of plowing and what that can cause in terms of slipperiness. So I was very grateful to see you guys out working. I know when others can't, you are, so thank you. In regards to traffic safety, the schools have been at the top of our list the last several meetings. Lieutenant Fluellen has organized a meeting 7:30 prior to school, watching the buses come in and cars come in and what that looks like for pedestrians. I am also on the site council for Otto Peterson, and the agenda item this week is parking lot safety and that whole thing we've been talking about the last few months. So I'm curious to see what the staff has sort of come up with as solutions or what sort of insight I can offer from our larger conversations, but it's definitely a priority for us and them. I want to thank our first responders who, unfortunately, there's been some unfortunate, curious events in our community. One of them was required a lockdown situation at the schools. I happened to be in the building and could help assist with that. But Lieutenant Fluellen had a follow-up meeting with the superintendent just to talk about what it looks like when an alert goes out like that and how we communicate with the schools and how they respond and what information we can give them. And so I think it was really great that they were able to have a debrief and what we can do better, what went well. I know that the building administrators really appreciated that when each building was released, an officer came directly to the door and assisted with that and made sure that everyone was safe and acknowledged that we were able to go. So that was really great. Speaking of policing, I'm so excited to see you back. This isn't serious. I just lose track of thought. That's why I typed something out. A document went out last week regarding contract policing on our city social media, et cetera. And I just kind of, of course, all the comments are going to be alarming or most of the time defensive or unsure about those sorts of things. So I can imagine if you don't sit at this desk, it can be difficult to understand that what may be discussed at these meetings amongst this group, trusting that this is the only location that occurs. Unfortunately, there are public meeting laws that do hold us accountable, and legal counsel, along with the city manager, are assuring that we're all staying in line. I personally have not discussed approving any sort of contract policing here at this dais or outside of chambers with any other counselors, and I fully trust that the research that Counselor Holmes and Counselor Miller are initiating in terms of researching 24/7 police coverage, that they're doing it with the best of intentions and without bias, just to provide information At the root, the goal is to keep the citizens of Scappoose as safe as possible. And I'm confident that these inquiries are just merely that. From where I sit, no decisions have been made as a collective group, nor have previous discussions taken place. And that the information currently being gathered is just going to be used to provide the community with the opportunity to respond and give insight, whether that's in person or a survey, and that discussions are to follow. And those would happen in collaboration with our current police staff. You know, nothing would be done without having those conversations. However, it is, you know, my personal hope that we keep the Scappoose Police Department intact and functioning independently. We've made really tremendous progress with our staffing and leadership changes at the city manager level. Things really got dealt with in the last several years under Alex, as well as the police chief level. Unfortunately, we've had some turnover there recently, but we've really pushed the department in a positive direction. And I have great hopes for the mentorship skills of our new public safety director, Brian Jensen, that he brings with him. And I look forward to seeing Scappoose PD thrive in the future. So thank you for being part of that. Alex's farewell. The thing I couldn't type. When Michael Sykes was city manager, he wasn't the intimidating one. I was more intimidated by Alex because she really, her presence in a room makes you want to be a little more professional or a little more put together. I didn't feel like I had to impress Michael as much. I had to really kind of show my smarts with her more. Because that's what she does when she comes into a room. And as he said, you know, he would expect something on a Thursday, but it would be to his desk by a Tuesday. It would be absolutely excellent, always was. The grant writing that she brought to the table during those early years was phenomenal. It seemed like we knew if she was going to write a grant, we just already expected to get the money. And that's how it went for a long time. So I'm really proud of you for that. I think that in your earlier years, you really held Michael accountable, and I appreciate that. I think it made it easier for you to come into that role because you had really he had been so generous in allowing you that space to really learn and grow in the role. So I'm thankful for him for the opportunities that he gave you. When Michael Sykes was the city manager, my kids used to call him the city boss, and the city boss would just call every now and again. It would be with like really big information. So those were like important phone calls. But now it's just Alex, and it happens so many times during the week. And sometimes she's put on speakerphone and my kids want to say stuff. And like, I think that it's so great that we've been able to have someone that our kids can see. And, you know, you've come into the schools before that they can see, you know, someone young, someone that's short and like mom, you know, that can really kind of take the lead on things. I just teach kids, but you run cities. So I think that's pretty commendable. Oregon City's stinking lucky, and they were smart to ask you to go there. I'm very sad to see you go, but I'm excited and proud that you accepted the role. And I hope that they appreciate you and value you for all that you bring. I wish you the best.
Thank you. Got 2 minutes. Thank you for what you said earlier about the contracting. I appreciate that. There's a lot of good information. And thank you to Interim Public Safety Director Brian Jensen and Alex for riding the ship here in the last couple of weeks and keeping us up. I mean, it was a tough time, and it was great that you could fill in and keep us running smooth. So I thank you for the moves that you guys made there. Again, thank you, Alex. The first year, it was a great first year. You really helped me drink from the fire hydrant, so I wasn't all taking it all on at once. You were there on weekends, at nighttime, texts, emails, phone calls. You were very thinking outside the box. You came to me with stuff, which was great because I can't see it all. And I think you did a very good job of bringing me in and asking and made it a much more enjoyable job. And I think you did a great job this last year. I think you're going to do a great job in the next endeavor. You're kind of making it up to those big leagues, and it's going to be fun to watch you excel and see what you do. And like Mike said, those are going to be tough boots to fill. And we've got our work cut out, but, I hope that you will still be in touch and I got your new number, so I can still reach out and, yeah, that's your mistake. No, I appreciate it very much. Coming from nowhere on this, you really helped in this first year, made me feel much more comfortable, feel more confident in, what we have here. And Scappoose is a special place and you're definitely part of it and always will be part of Scappoose. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Second.
Appreciate it. Meeting adjourned.